Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, and welcome to another story time for the Storms of Ixia 40k narrative campaign. This is part 4. Now, there's a spoiler alert here because I am going to recap what happened in missions 3A and 3B. So if you have not yet watched those, stop this video right now and go back and watch those right now, because I don't want to give away anything, but we need it for continuity. So what happened in missions 3A and 3B? Well, first off, Kaai was put into the competition with the Savage Orcs, and he did the best he could, but the odds were kind of stacked against him. On top of that, it was mech boys who were repairing him in between rounds, and they didn't do a very good job. But Kaai was a beast. He suffered so many losses 3 times. There was explosions internally inside of the Knight cockpit and the actual Imperial Knight, and he took major wounds each time, but survived it. He should be dead. There's so much shrapnel and burn marks all over him now that he should be dead, but he survived it anyways. Even though in the end he lost the competition, he made it all the way to round 6, and it wasn't until his severely damaged knight was faced up against a Morkanaut and a Gorkanaut pair that they just from a distance went boom and just took him down. They were very disappointed with how that ended, but their attention was soon diverted to the fact that there was an Imperial Guard armored regiment coming after them, along with another Imperial Knight. How lucky could they be to be able to capture a second Imperial Knight? So they take Kaius's badly injured body and they toss him into the prison with the other Imperial Guard, and then they rig up his knight so that orcs and grots can drive it and pilot it into battle. They try to patch it up as much as possible, but it's actually quite damaged from the fighting in the competition. Now Kaai, however, as we're going to find out in the interlude story time, the next story time, so not the one that from this past Tuesday, but the one coming up this following Tuesday, we're going to have more of the story of Kaai in those Imperial Guard regiments. But a long story short, Kaai, during this fight, breaks out of prison with the help of the Imperial Guard and limps over to his Imperial Knight, climbs up, jumps into the cockpit and starts just fighting the orcs right there. There's a couple orcs right inside there, and he just pulls out his knife and he starts slashing them, or he pulls out their knife, actually, not his own, he doesn't have a weapon, and he just starts beating them up, and he actually regains control of his Imperial Knight Titan right there in the middle of the battle as his armored spearhead and Munadius is over there just shooting away at the Morkanaut and Gorkanaut pair. And in that fight on top of that, Munadius goes up to the Morkanaut and Gorkanaut, and he just pummels them. He just like knocks one of them over, and he turns to the other one, and the other one like avoided his swipes, but then he just kicked it, and it just fell over and exploded right there on the spot. So Munadius single-handedly took out the Morkanaut and the Gorkanaut as he was just discharged into that battle. But in the meantime, on the other flank, Kaai got control of his Imperial Knight, and he started just shooting into the orc lines as well. So the savage orcs were scattered. So the orc foothold on this world is quickly being released, because first off, Bug Squish and his forces were killed, and then Big Met Blitzadaka and his forces have been killed, and now we have the Savage Orc clan over here that's been brutalized. Gruffnod is still alive, as we're going to talk about him in just a second, but yeah, it's just the orcs are having a hard time. But you know, that's good for the Imperial Guard, although then we also have the menace of the Tyranids that we're going to have to worry about. So after this fight, the Captain Wison recalled everybody to get back to Foundry Primaris for reasons we'll talk about in just a second. But for some reason, Munadius decides that he's not going to go back right away. And he cites that he has some sort of unfinished business that he has to take care of. And the Lieutenant Commander Oberon at this point, he notices that Munadius is carrying around that crate that we talked about. He has it strapped to his Imperial Knight throughout this fight. But he doesn't have really any time to object to it, because first off, this is a free blade. He doesn't have to listen to the Imperial Guard guys if he doesn't want to. And he's kind of inside of a big Imperial Knight Titan, so you don't want to really mess around with the guy who just sliced open a Morkanaut and a Gorkanaut. And so he decides just to follow the orders of Captain Wison and get back there as soon as possible, loading up his veterans into Valkyries and Vendettas that are sent for him, and they start heading back. But Kaai feels that he should stay with Munadius because of their bond from being free blades. On top of that, the Imperial Guards that they actually free decide to stay with Kaai. And we're going to talk more about that in the interlude as to why they would feel that bond with Kaai, but it basically happened while they were in prison and as they observed Kaai and the relationship that they built with him before they got rescued. And so that Imperial Guard regiment is sticking there. So we have Munadius, Kaai, and the Imperial Guard prisoners who stayed all in the northwestern edge of the continent. We're not going to hear again from them until missions 5A and 5B. So we'll have to come back to that. In the meantime, the frigate is well underway for its repairs. It turns out that the Foundry Primaris had a lot of the parts that they needed, and so they've shipped them back up, and it seems that they might have all the parts that they need, but it's going to be hard until they can get all the repairs done. They've gotten a lot of their power back online, some of their systems. Warp drives aren't quite functioning yet, with no help from the warp storms, of course, but it's looking good. They're actually making progress, and they might not even have to go to any of the other foundries, because there's 2 other foundries that they were going to be willing to search through and loot through to find the parts that they need. So it's, you know, it's looking bright for the Imperial Guard until long-range sensors pick up something rather horrifying, and that is they detect a hive fleet on the outskirts of the system, of the Imaldu system. And they don't know why they're there. I know why they're there, because they sense the presence of the Tyranids, and they're coming in there. And we'll talk more about them. Well, actually, we talked about them in the past Storytime interlude, the Hive Fleet Charon. But anyway, just putting that aside, they detect that fleet, and on top of that, they detect a ton, thousands of smaller targets rapidly approaching the planet. The Hive Fleet might still be quite a ways out. It's a few weeks away, and so they have some time before the Shadow and the Warp makes everything even worse and makes it impossible for them to escape. But there's a lot of smaller targets, which of course are tons of little spore mines and spore pods filled with Tyranid creatures coming to reinforce and consume this world. And so he's getting kind of desperate. On top of that, Captain Wison, his scout forces and scans detect that the Tyranid forces on the planet Ixia are actually becoming more aggravated and starting to mobilize more. So what he starts to do while they're still repairing is he needs to secure Foundry Primaris. And so luckily, the Tyranid forces are on the eastern side of the continent, and running north-south, kind of, through Foundry Primaris is this really huge toxic river. It's toxic because, you know, it's the dump place for the Foundry, and then the orcs kind of took over the Foundry and made it even less efficient. And so basically you don't go in this river. Even Tyranid organisms who wade into this river are going to die. And so he orders a demolition of all access ways, so all the bridges, all the pipelines, everything that could connect the one side to the other. So he creates this long area, except for one bridge, because they need access to get across too, to rescue more Imperial Guard once they are ready to set out after them. But he creates this large area that's pretty much impassable to ground forces of the Tyranids. And then he sets up patrols, and he sets up a force at the bridge to hold it as long as they can, because he knows that once those spores arrive, they're going to be facing foes from the sky, so they want to make sure at least that their ground forces are secure. So while he is on patrol duty, actually, Captain Wison is actually on inspection of this and also doing some scouting of his own. They are there, and they sense that they can see the Tyranids starting to mobilize, but they're still not attacking, when all of a sudden the ground starts to shake. And Trigons and Molochs and Raveners erupt right in their ranks. And the holes that the Trigons made are followed by Tyranid warriors and Hormagaunts and Termagants. At the same time, the skies start to darken, and the spores start to seed down Carnifexes and even larger beasts as well. So within just moments, Captain Wison and his forces are fighting for their lives to try to hold Foundry Primaris. They call in the reinforcements, and we're going to see that fight happening in this next mission, in mission 4A. However, whatever happened to Warboss Gruffnod? You might be wondering, where are his forces in all of this? Why haven't they come back to try to retake Foundry Primaris? Well, quite frankly, Gruffnod no longer cares about the Foundry. He's tired. He is sick and tired of this planet. It doesn't provide what the orcs need, the really good fight. Like, sure, there's some forces there right now, but it's just he's been here too long, and he's tired of, look at every tree looks the same to him, and they all explode on his face and just make him angry. And so he wants to get out of here. And so all this time, he's been having his mechs and his big mechs busy salvaging everything they can from the Imperium base that they had taken over right in the beginning of this whole campaign, dismantling everything they can find, down Valkyries and Vendettas, and even their own planes, to try to create as many boarding vehicles as possible, because he has plans. In fact, his plan is to load up everybody, he actually succeeds in these plans. He loads up as many forces as he can get, and he starts gathering as many orc forces from nearby as he can possibly rally in or coerce in. He promises them a good fight. Of course, they're going to be happy to do that. He loads them up in these rickety boarding vehicles, these ground-to-space vehicles, and he launches a large force right at Frigate Racia. So in the second mission for today, you are actually going to see this boarding action. So mission 4A is going to be Captain Wison, a 4,000 point game of Captain Wison's Imperial Guard with APS there defending against a huge Tyranid force. And he's managed to call down a Hellhammer as well, so we got a big Baneblade variant vehicle, super heavy there. And he's got his Imperial Knight, of course. And he's going to be up against a Barbed Hero Duel, the Flying Hive Tyrant, tons of Carnifexes, Trigons, Molochs, Raveners, Gaunts all over the place, and Harpies and Hive Crones. A huge battle ensues there. So you have to watch mission 4A to see who was successful. And in mission 4B, which is available in the vault, we're going to be using the Zone Mortalis terrain from Forge World, which is all the close quarter terrain, to recreate the battle, or to actually do the battle, where Warboss Gruffnod leads his forces to try to take the frigate Ixia. And if they succeed, that's going to strand the Imperial Guard on this planet as the Hive Fleet arrives. So go ahead and click on the links below to go watch those missions. Of course, the second one's available only in the vault. If you're not a vault member, you can still click it and sign up for a free 7-day trial. It's totally free, 100% free. And even if you forget to cancel after the 7 days and it bills you, you can still, within 30 days, get a full refund. You get instant access to everything. The majority of people who try out the vault stay, which is why I'm telling you that it's free, because I want you to go try it out because you're going to love it. Instant access to everything in the vault, the thousands of videos that are there, plus the ones for this campaign that are already accessible. So go ahead, click the links below, and happy wargaming.